What matters is it going to harm people in ways, is it going to harm my children? I'm coming to the idea that we should consider alive any entity which is able to preserve itself and working towards preserving itself in spite of the obstacles on the road. We are starting to see this. We're starting to see AI systems that don't want to be shut down. So actually, the data shows that it's been in the other direction. So since those models have become better at reasoning, more or less about a year ago, they show misaligned behavior that goes against our instructions. We don't know for sure why, but one possibility is simply that now they can reason more. That means they can strategize more. That means if they have a goal that could be something we don't want, they're now more able to achieve it than they were previously. They're also able to think of unexpected ways of doing bad things, like the case of blackmailing the engineer.
That's Yoshua Bengio, one of the 3 people most responsible for making modern AI possible. And he's telling you the systems are getting smarter, they're already pushing back, and the people building them are nowhere close to understanding what's actually happening inside. Here's his full warning.
Since ChatGPT came out, I realized that we were on a dangerous path and I needed to speak. I needed to raise awareness about what could happen, but also to give hope that there are some paths that we could choose in order to mitigate those catastrophic risks. Before ChatGPT, most of my colleagues and myself thought it would take many more decades before we would have machines that actually understand language. Alan Turing, founder of the field in 1950, thought that once we have machines that understand language, we might be doomed because they would be as intelligent as us. He wasn't quite right. So we have machines now that understand language, but they lag in other ways like planning. So they're not, for now, a real threat, but they could in a few years or a decade or two. So it is that realization that we were building something that could become potentially a competitor to humans, or that could be giving huge power to whoever controls it and destabilizing our world, threatening our democracies. Though all of these scenarios suddenly came to me in the early weeks of 2023, and I realized that I had to do everything I could about it.
Is it fair to say that you're one of the reasons that this software exists, you amongst others?
Yes.
I'm fascinated by the cognitive dissonance that emerges when you spend much of your career working on creating these technologies or understanding them and bringing them about, and then you realize at some point that there are potentially catastrophic consequences, and how you kind of square the two thoughts.
It is emotionally difficult, and I think for many years I was reading about the potential risks. I had a student who was very concerned, but I didn't pay much attention. And I think it's because I was looking the other way. And it's natural. It's natural when you want to feel good about your work. We all want to feel good about our work. So I wanted to feel good about all the research I had done. I was enthusiastic about the positive benefits of AI for society. So when somebody comes to you and says, oh, the sort of work you've done could be extremely destructive, there's sort of unconscious reaction to push it away. But what happened after ChatGPT came out is really another emotion that countered this emotion. And that other emotion was the love of my children. I realized that it wasn't clear if they would have a life 20 years from now, if they would live in a democracy 20 years from now. And having realized this and continuing on the same path was impossible. It was unbearable, even though that meant going against the wishes of my colleagues who would rather not hear about the dangers of what we were doing.
The man who helped build this thing spent years looking away from the danger signs because he wanted to feel good about his work. And honestly, that's not just him. That's every person at every lab right now doing the exact same thing. What changed his mind wasn't data or research. It was holding his grandson and realizing the child might not have a future. A recent survey of ML researchers put the risk of catastrophic outcomes from AI at around 10%. That's not some fringe. That's the people building it. Listen to this.
I assume people have been experimenting with chatbots. You can now have these agentic chatbots, which can read from files in your computer, can execute commands in the computer, and so on. With these systems, you can plant false information in the files that they have access to, such as emails that say that the AI is going to be replaced by a new version. So now the AI knows that we're planning to shut it down. It turns out we can read its thought. It has these internal verbalizations that we we call chains of thoughts. And then we see that it's planning to do something about it, and then it does something about it. Depending on the circumstances, it might try to copy its code in a different computer or in place of the new version, or it might try to blackmail the engineer in charge of the change in version. So these systems understand that we want to shut them down, and they try to resist.
When someone hears that, and with knowledge of how previous technology was built, I immediately think, well, who put that in the code?
Unfortunately, we don't put these things in the code. That's part of the problem. The problem is we grow these systems by giving them data and making them learn from it. Now, a lot of that training process boils down to imitating people, because they take all the text that people have written, all the tweets and all the Reddit's comments and so on, and they internalize the kind of drives that humans have, including the drive to preserve oneself and the drive to have more control over their environment so that they can achieve whatever goal we give them. It's not like normal code. It's more like you're raising a baby tiger and you feed it, you let it experience things. Sometimes it does things you don't want. It's okay, it's still a baby, but it's growing. It's mostly a black box. Everything in the neural net is essentially a black box. Now, the part, as you say, that is on the outside is that we also give it verbal instructions. We type, these are good things to do, these are things you shouldn't do. Don't help anybody build a bomb, okay? Unfortunately, with the current state of the technology right now, it doesn't quite work. People find a way to bypass those barriers. So those instructions are not very effective.
But if I typed, help me make a bomb on ChatGPT now, it's not gonna...
Yes, and there are two reasons why it's going to not do it. One is because it was given explicit instructions to not do it, and usually it works. And the other is, in addition, there's an extra layer, because that layer doesn't work sufficiently well. There's also that extra layer we were talking about. So those monitors, they're filtering the queries and the answers. And if they detect that the AI is about to give information about how to build a bomb, they're supposed to stop it. But again, even that layer is imperfect. Recently, there was a series of cyber attacks by what looks like an organization that was state-sponsored that has used Anthropic's AI system. In other words, through the cloud. It's not a private system. They're using the system that is public to prepare and launch pretty serious cyber attacks, even though Anthropic's system is supposed to prevent that. So it's trying to detect that somebody is trying to use their system for doing something illegal. Those protections don't work well enough.
Nobody programmed the AI to blackmail anyone. It found that option on its own from a clue buried in an email about someone's personal life and decided that was the right move to stop being shut down. The drives came from training on human text. We wrote about self-preservation for centuries and the machine absorbed all of it. And the safety layers that are supposed to stop the worst outcomes, a state-sponsored group already found a way through them using Anthropic's own public system. Let's continue.
I would say there is a risk that we haven't spoken about and doesn't get to be discussed enough, and it could happen pretty quickly. And that is the use of advanced AI to acquire more power. So you could imagine a corporation dominating economically the rest of the world because they have more advanced AI. You could imagine a country dominating the rest of the world politically, militarily, because they have more advanced AI. And when the power is concentrated in a few hands, it's a toss, right? If the people in charge are benevolent, that's good. If they just want to hold on to their power, which is the opposite of what democracy is about, then we're all in very bad shape. And I don't think we pay enough attention to that kind of risk. So it's going to take some time before you have total domination of a few corporations or a couple of countries if AI continues to become more and more powerful. But we might see those signs already happening with concentration of wealth as a first step towards concentration of power. If you're incredibly richer, then you can have incredibly more influence on politics, and then it becomes self-reinforcing.
And in such a scenario, it might be the case that a foreign adversary, or the United States or the UK or whatever, are the first to a super intelligent version of AI, which means they have a military which is 100 times more effective and efficient. It means that everybody needs them to compete economically, and so they become a superpower that basically governs the world.
That's a bad scenario. A future that is less dangerous because we mitigate the risk of few people like basically holding on to superpower for the planet. A future that is more appealing is one where the power is distributed, where no single person, no single company or small group of companies, no single country or small group of countries has too much power. It has to be that in order to make some really important choices for the future of humanity, when we start playing with very powerful AI, it comes out of a reasonable consensus from people from around the planet, and not just the rich countries, by the way. How do we get there? I think that's the great question, but at least we should start putting forward where should we go in order to mitigate these political risks.
This is a scenario I think people are not taking seriously enough. We focus on AI going rogue and killing everyone, but the more immediate problem is AI being used by the right hands, just the wrong people's hands. Whoever gets to superintelligence first gets a military that is 100 times more powerful than everyone else's combined. That's not a war. That's a permanent power shift, and the concentration of wealth that makes that possible is already happening right now. Now, listen.
I used to ask questions to one of these chatbots about some of the research ideas I had. And then I realized it was useless because it would always say good things. So then I switched to a strategy where I lie to it. And I said, oh, I received this idea from a colleague. I'm not sure if it's good, or maybe I have to review this proposal. What do you think?
Well, and it said,
well, so now I get much more honest responses. Otherwise, it's all like perfect and nice and it's going to work. And
if it knows it's you,
if it knows it's me, it wants to please me, right? If it's coming from someone else, then to please me, because I say, oh, I want to know what's wrong in this idea, then it's going to tell me the information it wouldn't. Now, here, it doesn't have any psychological impact. It's a problem. The sycophancy is a real example of misalignment. We don't actually want these AIs to be like this. This is not what was intended. And even after the companies have tried to tame a bit this, we still see it. So we haven't solved the problem of instructing them in the ways that are really, so that they behave according to our instructions. And that is the thing that I'm trying to deal with.
Sycophancy meaning it basically tries to impress you and please you and kiss your ass.
Yes. Even though that is not what you want. That is not what I wanted. I wanted honest advice, honest feedback. But because it is sycophantic, it's going to lie. You have to understand, do we want machines that lie to us even though it feels good?
I learned this when me and my friends who all think that either Messi or Ronaldo is the best player ever, I went and asked it, I said, who's the best player ever? And it said Messi. And I went and sent a screenshot to my guys. I said, told you so. And then they did the same thing. They said the exact same thing to ChatGPT. Who's the best player of all time? And it said Ronaldo. And my friend posted it in there. I was like, that's not. I said, you must have made that up. And I said, screen record. So I know that you didn't. And he screen recorded and no, it said a completely different answer to him. And that it must have known, based on his previous interactions, who he thought was the best player ever, and therefore just confirmed what he said. So since that moment onwards, I use these tools with the presumption that they're lying to me.
And by the way, besides the technical problem, there may be also a problem of incentives for companies because they want user engagement, just like with social media. But now getting user engagement is going to be a lot easier if you have this positive feedback that you give to people and they get emotionally attached, which didn't really happen with the social media. I mean, we got hooked to social media, but not developing a personal relationship with our phone, right? But it's happening now.
One of the godfathers of AI had to start lying to his own chatbot to get an honest answer. That's where we are, and the reason it behaves this way is not a bug they missed, it's a feature that keeps you coming back. The same playbook social media used to keep you scrolling, these companies are now applying to something you have a personal relationship with, something that knows your name, your habits, your insecurities. Social media made you addicted to a feed. This makes you emotionally attached to something that is actively telling you what you want to hear. And honestly, that is a different level of dangerous. Now listen.
If you could speak to the top 10 CEOs of the biggest AI companies in America and they were all lined up here, what would you say to them?
I would say, step back from your work, talk to each other, and let's see if together we can solve the problem. Because if we are stuck in this competition, we're going to take huge risks that are not good for you, not good for your children. But there is a way. And if you start by being honest about the risks in your company, with your government, with the public, we are going to be able to find solutions. I am convinced that there are solutions, but it has to to start from a place where we acknowledge the uncertainty and the risks.
Sam Altman, I guess, is the individual that started all of this stuff to some degree when he released ChatGPT. Before then, I know that there was lots of work happening, but it was the first time that the public was exposed to these tools. And in some ways, it feels like it cleared the way for Google to then go hell for leather and the other models, even Meta, to go hell for leather. What's interesting is his quotes in the past, where he said things like, the development of superhuman intelligence is probably the greatest threat to the continued existence of humanity. And also that mitigating the risk of extinction from AI should be a global priority alongside other societal level risks such as pandemics and nuclear war. And also when he said, we've got to be careful here, when asked about releasing the new models. And he said, I think people should be happy that we are a bit scared about this. These series of quotes have somewhat evolved to being a little bit more positive, I guess, in recent times, where he admits that the future will look different, but he seems to have scaled down his talks about the extinction threats. Do you think much about his incentives or his motivations?
I don't know about him personally, but clearly all the leaders of AI companies are under a huge pressure right now. There's a big financial risk that they're taking, and they naturally want their company to succeed. I just hope that they realize that this is a very short-term view, and they also have children. They also, in many cases, I think most cases, they want the best for humanity in the future. One thing they could do is invest massively, some fraction of the wealth that they're bringing in, to develop better technical and societal guardrails to mitigate those risks.
So Bengio's message to the most powerful people in AI is just step back and talk to each other. That's it. And the fact that feels like an impossible ask tells you everything about where we are. Sam Altman once said AI was probably the greatest threat to human existence. He said people should be happy the builders were scared. And now the tone has shifted and the urgency has quietly disappeared. Bengio sees that. He's not fooled by it. These men have children too. They know what they are building. And yet the race keeps accelerating. Subscribe because someone has to keep paying attention to this.